Over to this session's very capable moderator, the Sustainability Forum's very own Natalie Lowe.
Excellent. Welcome to day 2. And we have such an incredible panel here. I'm actually just going to quickly give you their names. We've got Cameron Tulloch of Venture Launch, Lisa Hrablek of Wicked Ideas Media. Maybe you just want to give everyone a wave. Leora Rothschild from Canadian Businesses for Social Responsibility, and Kimberly Bone, President of Creative Twist, and also the President of the Toronto chapter of ILEA. So welcome to the panelists. Thank you for being here today. If all of you in the audience would like to learn more about them, you can click on their link. We encourage you to connect with these people. They're incredible resources. I want to acknowledge that it is Small Business Week. Many of us are small businesses, and sometimes the pressure has been on businesses to lead the change. And I wonder if we're inviting the arsonists to fight the fire. So we have 2 questions for our panelists, and before anyone goes, Natalie's being mean again, I want you to know they got the questions in advance, and we're not trying to gotcha anybody. We're trying to look at reality and address a very real situation. So the first question is, Anand Giridharadas, the former NYT columnist and author of Winner Takes All, and Joseph Stiglitz, who is a Nobel Prize-winning economist, both have their doubts about the ability of corporations to solve the problems of the world. Stiglitz is quoted as saying, "Like the dieter who would rather do anything to lose weight than actually eat less, the business elite would fly us into Davos and have us save the world through social impact investing, entrepreneurship, sustainable capitalism, philanthrocapitalism, artificial intelligence, and market-driven solutions. They would fund 1 million of these buzzwordy programs rather than fundamentally question the rules of the game or alter their own behavior to reduce the harm of the existing distorted, inefficient, and unfair rules." Ouch, Stiglitz didn't hold much back there. Now, B Lab is actually the body which certifies B corporations, and the co-founder, Jay Goen Gilbert, actually agreed a certain degree. He wrote in Forbes magazine that Giridharadas and Stiglitz were mostly right. So I've asked the panelists to tell us, why were they only mostly right, and how do you believe companies can be a force for good, particularly environmental good? And what we're going to do is we've given each panelist 3 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning. I'll wave, jump up and down, do something to catch your attention. And we're going to go in alphabetical order, if that's okay. So we will go Kimberly Bone, you're going to go first. Lisa Hrablek, Leora Rothschild, you will go third, and Cam. And then for the next question, we'll reverse that order. So Kimberly, please, you have 3 minutes. How can corporations actually be a force for good?
Well, I think they're only mostly right because corporations need the opportunity to make a statement in the world, and they just need to make that active choice to put sustainability and the existence beyond the moment at the forefront of importance in everything that they do. So the pushback of financial and stakeholders and, the need to feed that bank account and make all your shareholders and everybody happy is not going to sustain the world when things that are beyond our control really start to happen more than they already are. So there are so many things that are happening that are beyond our control, and unless we take the reins of the climate, of the way that we approach business to be more sustainable, then things are just going to spiral out of control. And if anything is a signifier of ways things can spiral out of control, we're in a pandemic. And there are things that are happening in the world that nobody imagined could happen in this day and age. And we are at the mercy of things that nobody believed that we would be at the mercy of. So I think it's just realizing that we are all part of making a choice to be better and do better. And that really comes down to the core of corporate culture and putting those things higher than the almighty dollar. And, it's not an easy task, but it's something that we all, as small businesses, as medium-sized businesses, and in large businesses, have to look at the greater good of the world to get there.
Excellent. Thank you, Kimberly. You run a small business, and I think you actually run 2 small businesses, don't you? So you're certainly experiencing that. And we're going to talk in a little bit about the particular strains on small businesses versus large corporations. Lisa Hrablek, joining us from the East Coast. Welcome. So.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go.
Sorry. Yes. Hello, everybody. So, I have probably 3 points to make to your question. So the first is, of course, they're mostly right, because our problems are so large. And if we take climate change, which is like a super wicked problem, no one sector alone can solve it. So business cannot solve climate change on its own any more than the nonprofit sector can, or government, or citizens themselves. These problems are so large, we all have to recognize our role within them. Kimberly is absolutely right. The profit motivation of businesses, particularly large corporations, make it a challenge. Part of what makes that a challenge for existing businesses is they already have processes in place, and I'm sure Leora's going to speak to this, that it's about turning these very large ships. So I'm a B Corp. I know Jay, so I totally agree with him. What I like about being a B Corp is you get this certification, but really it's this ongoing process that you can continually return to test your processes again. So I highly recommend people check out bcorporation.net, which is the website. You can sign up for free to try to begin to do the assessment, which is a great way to benchmark all of the little things and large things that you're doing. The other thing I would say is this is a question of innovation, right? So there's 2 types of innovation that's going to happen here. One is finding those innovations to address climate. The other are the innovations we need to bring into businesses and corporations in how they are set up and how they function to enable them to be better placed to address these larger issues for the public good. And so, with B Corps, for instance, it's about moving from shareholder primacy to stakeholder primacy. And I'm sure you're hearing a lot about that if you're actually interested in all this. And this is about the impact you're having on the larger community that you're trying to work within. And so for the events industry, that's a question of certainly where you are holding the events, but then also for your audience and for all of the people who have arrived to learn more, how are we helping? How are each of us in our own way helping to make all of us a little bit better?
Excellent. Lisa, thank you so much. And I just want to underline that you talked about 3 things that come up again and again and again: scale, process, and innovation. And thank you for bringing up stakeholder versus shareholder. And I'm sure we could go down a rabbit hole about the World Business Council and their announcement earlier this year, and we'll all nerd out, and everybody watching will go, what are they talking about? So from the East Coast, joining us a little bit earlier, our friend from the West, Leor, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate the invitation, and what a great conversation.
So, Lior, tell us why. I mean, obviously, you run an organization that helps businesses take those forward steps. Why do you believe that these observers were only mostly right? And what do you believe corporations in Canada, particularly, can do to increase their social responsibility?
Thanks for the question. And I think what you read, I agree, it is mostly right, but there's also another perspective too. And there's something different that's happening, and that difference is us as consumers, as people who are running businesses. We are being the change, and that sounds like, well, maybe that was always the case, but I think maybe we have to recognize that the people who are having the conversation that we're having right now has largely, for a long time, been a limited size of community. Mm-hmm. But the great news is that it's growing, and it's growing fast. And what we're seeing is that even in the most difficult parts of this particular downturn, the companies that have started early, that have taken early action in managing their greenhouse gas emissions, in moving towards a circular economy, in leading on diversity and inclusion practices, are outperforming the rest of the market. So the financial community uses these metrics called ESG, or environment, social, and governance criteria, to measure whether a company is a good investment or not, and what their risk exposure is. They measure all kinds of risk, including climate risk. And if you look at virtually any stock indicator around ESG leaders, they are in some cases by far outperforming the rest of the market. And so the natural question is, why wouldn't every company pursue being a sustainability leader, driving towards making business a force for good if it makes money, if they're leaving money on the table, if they don't do that? And the answer is because it hasn't always made money. Traditionally, it wasn't always the case. I know that the previous speaker, Melissa, talked about Alberta being having fossil fuels being a big part of the energy mix. I used to work in the oil and gas sector in Alberta for a long time, and people used to. I would train literally every employee in the company around our sustainability practices, what we were doing, where we were going next, why it was important, and then really somebody would always put up their hand and ask, "Does this stuff have a material difference to our stock price?" And I would say, well, based on research out there, indications show that possibly, and where it's going is even more so. And people would say, well, give me a call back when it's pretty obvious that it's making a difference. Well, I'm calling everybody back these days because probably about 5 years ago, things really changed. And the companies that have been doing that are attracting top talent. They're attracting investment, and there's a huge demand out there for positive, purpose-driven businesses who are being part of the change.
Excellent. And I love you kept a list. You're calling everyone back. That's fantastic. 90% of the data is follow-up. You spoke about a lot of very cool things. And for those of you who haven't watched the pre-recorded, Dr. Megan Morikawa looks at the circular economy from sort of a very science-based version. And it ties in nicely with what Lior was talking about. Cam Tulloch, longtime TSCF supporter, tell us in 3 minutes, what do we need to do to get them mostly right, or the mostly right parts flipped?
There's probably quite a lot we have to do. And thank you so much for the invitation to come in and join the conference today. Kimberly mentioned when she was speaking the almighty dollar. So I'll start with what makes Stigler's statement right, and that's that price and profitability matters. And what makes it only mostly right is, I think, close to what Lior was talking about, in that market share and consumer demand matters. So what I mean by the profitability part is that the only thing that will allow a well-run, environmentally conscientious business to continue doing its good work is to have profit, to have the means to keep going and keep doing what it needs to do. And almost all business models in our modern economy are based on the idea of driving to a very low cost of production so that products can be sold at low prices and earn high margins. So I admit that there are many sustainable products that are not more expensive than incumbent products, but I think many consumers worry that that's not the case, that doing the right thing costs more. And many, at this current state, many environmentally sensitive products do cost more. So this might leave the average consumer, not the early adopters, maybe most of the people who would speak on the conference or maybe some who joined the call, but the mass segment in the middle, they might be at odds with the idea of, should we be doing better environmentally, or are we responsible for bearing the cost of more expensive ingredients or living wage labor and so on, which is a very complex problem for our 3-day conference. But I think probably a big part about what makes this claim right. So what makes it only mostly right is that market share and consumer demand matters. So if environmentally sustainable products become more affordable, there's a competitive advantage. If they become more affordable, the competitive advantage of those old products will diminish, and hopefully environmentally sensitive ones will gain more market share. And also, if they become more compelling because of other features and benefits, they have more unique selling propositions, just over and above being environmentally sustainable, consumers should act positively. So kind of the crux of the middle of that was that the massive consumers are not early adopters of environmentalism. They're still buying products to solve their primary problem. Maybe that's entertaining prospects at an event, or entertaining or supporting their employees, or cleaning houses, or managing their body odor based on the cosmetic products they use, or commuting to work in cars. They're still dealing with the primary problem, not the environmental problem. So how as businesses do we solve those problems in environmentally sustainable ways?
Right. You raised some excellent points. And, in our final session of the conference, we're going to talk about communication and perhaps how marketing has driven us to a higher consumption level than we were previously. I blame it all on a Harvard Business Review article from 1994 called "Marketing is Everything." It was a bit of our Bible in the gaming industry, and you certainly see where we push people to purchase more things than they really need.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the current landscape, because boy, 2020 has been quite a year. Although a very happy year for Lior. He welcomed a new little addition to his family. So congratulations. We're fighting to get her a clean, sustainable world to grow up in. But 2020 has been a perfect storm for so many of us. Global pandemic, social tensions over longstanding injustices, and every week there's something new in the climate disaster news. Not to mention, for more than a few of us, homeschooling, and then, of course, the financial strain of the lockdown. Yet in every economy, there are always people and businesses who thrive. So where is our silver lining? Where is our opportunity for us to become more sustainable and take a leap forward? What are the key actions we need to take to embrace those opportunities? So I'm going to go in reverse order. Again, you have 3 minutes. I'll tap my shoulder when you're at 30 seconds. And Cam, you go first.
Yeah, I think that some of what I'm about to say is going to sound negative, but I promise it's positive. I promise that there's a silver lining opportunity in it. And I think that the scariest and equally the most exciting thing about business in 2020 is that there is literally no status quo. So for many of us, what we know, or how we acted, or how we served our customers, or how we acted upon the environment, it's all out the window. So business owners might have been hesitant to change because they feared big new ideas, or even they were struggling to make incremental changes for the good of the environment, for good of their business. So regarding the opportunity, this is a time to experience some change. You're going to be forced to anyway, so let's do it. So entrepreneurship for the last decade has shifted towards this culture of lean experiments. It's not about big, perfect business plans. It's about trying lean experiments and iterating and doing new things. So if nothing else has positively happened in 2020, it's expanded that view and given us a moment for more entrenched business owners to embrace the culture of change and lean experiment. So is this doom and gloom, everything's changing, or is this an environmental environment as a business opportunity, as the session was titled? And so I think consumers, the big opportunity is that not only are we being forced to change and everything's on the table, but consumers are becoming very comfortable with hearing from suppliers that things are changing. The opportunity for innovation and major breakthroughs comes from running new experiments and building new startups and designing new products and services. And customers are used to the stuff that they're buying changing or being unavailable right now. So let's seize that opportunity to offer better products and services. The other kind of strangely positive thing I want to point out is that it sounds negative, but I promise it's positive. There's a direct impact on the stigma of failed experiments that has come out of COVID. There are well-run businesses that haven't made it amongst the pandemic, and in the old school way of business, certainly more than 10 years ago, failure was death. And in lean startups, it's not quite death anymore. Are becoming more willing to run those experiments. So this means that the lowered fear of failure will allow people to try new things, whether that's a seller or to buy new things from you as a buyer. So ultimately, if nothing is the same, everything's on the table. And if that's true, why not build environmental stewardship into the next iteration of the business models and business versions and products and services that we as entrepreneurs choose to design? Yeah. Right.
So you're looking at it from that model of crisis and opportunity, right? Things are in flux. It's a great time to make changes.
Entrepreneurial people love running new experiments and love change far more than consumers and established business people do. So entrepreneurs on the call today, use this as a time to experiment with something. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Lior, and before we start, Lior, I'm going to apologize because for some reason we spelt your last name incorrectly. So my apologies. It is Rothschild. And we'll make sure that everybody has your contact and knows about CBSR and the great work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Lior, where's the opportunity?
Yeah, it's the right question. When we all sort of went into lockdown and everything became very uncertain, CBSR, we recognized that we needed to come out and say something, but that was going to add value. And so what we chose to do, because we started hearing how, this company is now sort of pivoted their operations to, instead of producing vehicles, they're now producing ventilators, and said, I wonder how much of that is actually happening in Canada. And so through CBSR, we took a very broad scan of both small and large companies from coast to coast and put together a list of 500 case studies that we call the Canadian Business Responders List. These are Canadian companies who have pivoted to either completely change their operations to meet the need of the moment. They have changed the way that they do business to protect their staff, to invest in their communities, and making sure that they're really responding to what's happening in our current situation. And it's really interesting when you see an emergency like that happen. It sort of puts everything into perspective. Yeah. Nobody out there said, "Oh my gosh, we need to protect our investors." There's nobody who defaulted to that as their immediate instinct. Everybody said, okay, it's pretty obvious what our priority is. Take care of our people, take care of our community, let's stick together, and let's get through this. And I think recognizing that has been really important. So I think that's sort of like an important part of it. I also think that what we're experiencing now that we've sort of settled into our new reality is that this really is a great reset. And building on what Cam talked about in terms of using this moment as an opportunity to really bring out the innovative nature in all of us, I think that's super important. And I know that so many of us are coming to this meeting, from the event sector. And I think that it's really important to ask, what is the future of events going to look like when we come out of this? And I think doing what is necessary now to be ready for that new reality is going to be really important, and is going to separate those who are going to wind down their business and those who are going to see more growth than they ever have before. Because this downturn is an opportunity for all of us to reflect and to build back better than we were before. And what we're going to see right now, I think we're seeing that there's actually less competition out there. There's more amalgamation that's possible. There's opportunity for partnership with tourism boards and airlines and hotels who are desperate for business. They might not have taken your call when things were really busy. Now is the time to reach out and build those relationships. Everybody's a bit more humble. Everybody's got a bit more time on their hands, and everybody's got access to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something. Another big change, and this relates to energy, which I talked about before, is that renewable energy has officially overtaken fossil fuels as the great job creator. The majority of our power systems in this country are actually run on non-fossil fuels, specifically on power. Mobility, of course, gasoline is still very important, but renewables is a really big part of our energy system. So how are you incorporating that into your new reality when you are building your businesses and events for the future? So looking at how future events, future businesses can be more sustainable, more resilient to accommodate the fact that you might need to pivot again, and more inclusive, because that is also a really big theme of 2020. Baking that all in now will help you to prepare for when we go to a new reality coming out of this pandemic.
Absolutely. And I did let you go a little bit further on that because I know that. No. It was interesting and vital that people understand you have such a deep understanding of the energy sector. And we think climate change, we immediately default to fossil fuels. We know it's a little bit of a lightning rod topic in Canada right now. So, we need to talk about it. If you were boring, I'd have cut you off immediately. No worries, but you were great, and thank you. Your voice is so much needed. Lisa, where's the silver lining?
So the silver lining. So we're at an events conference, and we are talking to and with other event planners. When I plan events, because I have planned events, and when I facilitate, I always say we need to create safe and welcoming spaces to come in, to be able to learn, and to figure out how to move forward on complex issues. So there's two very particular ways that event planners can create those safe and welcoming spaces. So one, you are a living example of it, Natalie, with this conference. You've created a conference that allows for a safe and welcoming space for us to talk about how to begin to do this. I think that's critically important, because when we attempt as individuals to solve big, huge problems, we're listening to experts. People are listening to the four of us, and they're going, whoa, okay, oh my God, I don't sound like them. That's brilliant. I didn't think of that. We need people to understand it's okay wherever the heck you are on the spectrum of change, where the heck you are on understanding. Come on in. The water's fine. We're going to make you feel comfortable, and we're going to help you progress at the level you're going to progress at. That's very much that's the deep change way of lean startups, right? So the lean theory is, you try it, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you adjust, right? So that's how we're also going to solve climate change and these other big problems. The other way we're going to do this is creating safe and welcoming spaces for event planners to feel that they can reach out into the larger sustainability community and feel welcomed and accepted. Mm-hmm. And so networks are critically important. So I personally belong to the B Corp network, and I got to tell you, about 3 years ago, I became part of the leadership team of a group within B Corp specifically for women founders and women executive leaders called We the Change. We get together at least once a month, and we've been doing it for 3 years. But it's been critically important since COVID happened, because we get together and we support each other. We know where each other are. And I get my inspiration from these other people who are stumbling along with me. And we will grow and get better together.
Absolutely. Lisa, you get extra bonus points for identifying the 4 pillars of TSEF. We did not pay her to say that, but you hit educate, inspire, collaborate, and action.
I win a muffin.
Thank you. Yeah. Now I need to find a prize. I'm always looking to find a prize. So thank you. And it's so true. We're so easily intimidated, but I have to tell you, there's someone out of the 4 of these who is just not intimidated. Miss Kimberly, you started a new business during the pandemic. So, and she was so cute. When I called her, she said, "Oh, I don't know if I belong on that." I'm like, "Lady, you are driving the change in our industry." So Kimberly, talk to us about the silver lining. Obviously you found a silver lining, and talk to us about, the brilliance or foolhardiness, depending on the hour of the day, that propelled you to go forward and take such a risk.
Well, first of all, this has been a really wonderful panel to be on, and I'm learning from all of you. So thank you for your for sharing and your insights. I just had to approach this moment in time with opportunity and possibility in mind. From my role as a leader for the ILEA, International Live Events Association Toronto chapter, we're all about live events, but we can't be live at the moment. So, when I had our first board meeting, I had to talk about, okay, what are the opportunities that we can embrace in this moment? The fact that our reach can be so much farther as a little Toronto chapter, because we're reaching out across the virtual world. And so we can build our community stronger. And I think that that's really, really it. It's look for that silver lining in the reach, and the opportunity to make choices. Cameron was saying, this is the chance for us to reframe how we do business. This is the chance for us to maybe realize that virtual is here to stay, and hybrid will be here moving forward. And think about those little steps. Maybe not everybody is flying to a conference, and so you're making some change that way in your consumption, and but you're still having the opportunity to expand your audience, because instead of sending 3 people on a plane in hotels and eating and all of that, they're sending five people, 1 of them live and 4 of them virtually, to engage and embrace and share. It's a time for risk. I had the opportunity to jump in and start a virtual venue and support my community by providing a space for event professionals to still sustain business. And, I took the opportunity to leap. And I think we all need to realize that we just need a little courage to make change, and realize that any little bit that we do has impact. And just like voting, this crazy world that we're in, the thing that you do, the steps that you take count.
Yes, they certainly do. Well, we talk about inspiration and we want to be inspired, but other people are listening to the four of you and they are in turn being inspired by the steps and the actions. Lior, certainly as an organizer, you inspire Candace and I. Lisa, Cam, Kimberly, you guys have all sort of shown us the possibilities. I wanted to mention something that kind of came up and I thought it was interesting. It's an old book, but Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. And in it, he talks about the flywheel. I see a lot of nods, right? Leaders are readers, so everybody. In that book, he talks about the flywheel and about its usefulness. And I think it has a good application in our current situation for solving big problems. I'm going to change up the last question just a tiny bit because it's a cold, gray, yucky day here in a beautiful venue, though. I want you to tell me a company or a leader in business who inspires you and give our audience something to kind of run off and look into. I'll go last because you all four inspire me. But what if we go back, Kimberly? Is there a company or a leader right now that's really inspiring you from an environmental perspective?
Oh my goodness. You've put me on the spot. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to defer and let me think about it for a second. I apologize.
Done. No problem. Lisa.
Well, I actually was quite impressed with a recent announcement from Michael McCain of Maple Leaf Foods, who recently said that his goal is to make Maple Leaf Foods the most sustainable protein producer in the world. That is quite a reach. And if indeed Maple Leaf Foods, because that's a massive corporation. If Maple Leaf Foods is actually, calling up Lior and others and actually putting in the work to actually do the change that an agricultural and a meat producer needs to do, then those are the signs I look for.
Yeah, excellent. They're telling me we've got 2 minutes left here, so I'm just kind of trying to. No, that's okay. I completely put you guys on the spot. Lior, though, that's kind of a nice segue for you.
Well,
Maple Leaf Foods.
I thank you for going to me next because I am fortunate to work very closely with Maple Leaf Foods, and I can tell you it's real. The stuff they're doing is inspiring. It's leading, and I love putting the Maple Leaf Foods people in a room with other companies that I'm trying to nudge a little bit further because they're like borderline activisty. The Maple Leaf Foods people are like, you can be doing more. And yeah, the fact that they're carbon neutral, the fact that they're investing in plant-based proteins, the fact that they're making investments into like insect farms because they believe that's one day going to be part of the human diet somewhere along the food supply chain. Really, really leading edge stuff. But I'm going to give another example of a company because it's hard. It's like asking me to choose between my babies,
Okay, but baby has to be quick on this one. So I'm getting all kinds of waves. So
an SME that's doing some really amazing work in Alberta called Blind Man Brewing Company. They're actually using scrubbers to capture the carbon dioxide emissions from some of their operations and are using a third-party vendor to actually take that CO2 and pump it into greenhouses to grow food. Yep. Really great stuff.
Excellent. So we've got a beer date the next time I'm in Calgary. Lior, Cam, 5 seconds. Who's your?
It's a big company, but you actually turned me on to the idea of Patagonia. So think like a marketer. I'm virtue signaling my brand today, and I didn't realize what it was. And I took on rock climbing last year, right around the time of TSEF 2019, I didn't know the brand at all. And this value proposition of their remanufacturing and warranty and environmental activism as a tenet of the business, I went from owning no pieces to 4, and that's a pretty big commitment in the world of this brand. So I think they've done an excellent job at Patty.
Absolutely.
One of the original B Corps.
Absolutely. Starter of 1% for the planet. We'll link to their site. Guys, thank you so much. I have a page full of notes. I make the worst moderator because I've always got my head down, writing down everything that you say. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to throw it back over to Lauren. If you want to get a hold of our panelists, please reach out to them and we will link with all of their companies and give you their contact information. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Melissa, I'm very excited for this particular recap because there was a lot of good information and good ideas going on through that panel. Now, Cameron mentioned market share and consumer demand as one of the big drivers in change. What sort of shifts in consumer demand have you been seeing regarding sustainability within events?
Yeah, and I love that Cam talked about the changes that we're seeing in the customer's path to purchase, and that customers or our buyers are just becoming increasingly more savvy. So when we talk about businesses adopting a more sustainable approach, it's becoming a must do and not a nice to do anymore. We're kind of transitioning for it needing to be a fundamental part of how we do business and make business decisions.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of that demand, it's now people will say, I chose this one because they do these things. You're seeing maybe a bit more morality in purchasing and consumer actions.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. And something we've certainly experienced. It's becoming a larger part of the conversation earlier on in the conversation. And that's just a really exciting thing to see when we talk about business transformation.
Have you seen any environmentally friendly or sustainable sort of actions in the business world that have been coming down in price, that have been becoming more accessible for businesses to take on as of late?
I would say one thing that we're certainly seeing is this collaboration. And to Lisa's point about us not being able to do this alone, we can't turn the ship by ourselves, and maybe we need to solicit some tugboats to come help, or we need to act as tugboats ourselves. And so I think part of the reason that it's becoming more accessible is maybe not in affordability, but the solutions that we need already exist. It's just about finding the right person to connect to that can be part of the transformation.
As a communication professional, the Maple Leaf is actually one of my favorite communication example companies because they do such a good job on so many angles there. But they came up as a big company with a big goal who is actually taking steps to do big pivots and take major real action in terms of climate change and how their business works. Is there a company that you found particularly inspiring in terms of their sustainability actions?
What I find inspiring is that we're seeing so many people follow in line. And when we talk about the tourism or the events industry, all of the major players, be it Marriott or Hilton or every major airline, is putting out a long-term 2025, 2035 commitment to reducing emissions. And I think the more that we can use these leaders to demonstrate that this is what we should be doing, and understanding their platforms, and particularly understanding how they're going to get there. So, Lior mentioned that it's not just greenwashing. There's actually things that are happening behind the scenes, and the more we can dig into that, I think the better we'll be as an industry.
That is true. Well, thank you so much for that insight, Melissa. And I'd like to take a moment to thank more of our wonderful warrior level sponsors: Tourism Saskatoon, PHI Center, and Iberostar Hotels and Resorts. Thank you so much for making the Sustainable Events Forum possible. We could not do this without your support. Now,